The Galactic Senate chamber was never silent. Even in times of crisis, whispers filled the air, deals were made in hushed tones, and alliances were broken without a sound. But today, there was nothing. No words, no whispers, only fear. The holographic screen at the center of the chamber flickered, displaying a red warning, an urgent distress signal from an outer colony. The senators, rulers of great empires, had seen many battles, many wars. But this message was different. The voice on the transmission was shaking. "This is Outpost Vega 7, requesting immediate assistance. We don't know what we're facing. The enemy, they're not like anything we've seen. The voice cut off, replaced by static. Then one final word came through, spoken in a whisper that sent chills through the room. "Humans." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Some stood up, as if ready to run. Others clenched their fists, trying to hide their fear. The Chancellor, an old and experienced leader of the Rylock Dominion, slammed his hand on the table. "This is impossible," he growled. "Humans are gone. They were wiped out centuries ago. We all agreed. We made sure of it." A senator from the Xilari Confederation shook his head, his tentacles twitching in distress. "Then explain that message," he said. "Explain why an entire outpost, one of our strongest, just vanished into silence." The room remained frozen in shock until a deep voice spoke from the shadows. "We should have never forgotten." All eyes turned toward High Admiral Kor, the oldest living military leader in the galaxy. His species, the Thulzen, had fought against humans in the war centuries ago. He was one of the few who survived, and he had never stopped fearing them. "You weren't there," Kor said, his voice low but firm. "You didn't see what they were capable of. Your histories call it a war. That's a lie. It was never a war. It was survival. And we barely made it." The younger senators scoffed. "They were primitive," one of them said. "Weak compared to us. We had better ships, better weapons. How could they have been a real threat?" Kor's eyes darkened. "Because they learn, they adapt, and they do not forgive." The chamber fell silent again. Outside, the stars burned bright, but inside, darkness crept into the hearts of those who had once ruled the galaxy. Somewhere out there, in the cold void of space, something had awakened. Something ancient. Something that had waited patiently in the shadows. Humanity had returned, and this time, they would not be stopped. Panic spread through the Galactic Senate like wildfire. The senators, once proud rulers of their own empires, now whispered in terrified voices. Some called for an immediate investigation. Others demanded military action. But deep down, they all knew the truth. There was no easy solution to this problem. High Admiral Kor remained still, his eyes locked on the flickering hologram. "We need answers," he finally said. "Send scouts. We need to know if this is real." The Chancellor hesitated. "And if it is?" Kor exhaled sharply. "Then the galaxy is already lost." A fleet was assembled within hours, a task force of elite scout ships, each equipped with the best stealth technology in the galaxy. Their mission was simple: travel to Outpost Vega 7, investigate the disturbance, and report back. They were given strict orders: engage only if necessary. As the ships left hyperspace near the ruined outpost, the first thing they noticed was the silence. There were no distress beacons, no energy signatures, no signs of life. The station, once a thriving colony, now drifted like a lifeless husk in the darkness. Captain Relvek, commander of the lead scout ship, swallowed hard. "Send drones. I want a full scan of that station." The drones launched, small and nearly invisible. They zipped through the remains of Vega 7, scanning every corridor, every ruined chamber. What they found sent chills through the entire crew. There were no bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. Equipment was still intact. Meals were left unfinished. Terminals flickered, waiting for their users to return. "Where are the people?" one officer whispered. A beeping sound interrupted their thoughts. One of the drones had found something. A message, hastily scratched onto a metal bulkhead. The crew held their breath as the translation came through. "We were wrong about them." Relvek's grip on his console tightened. "Get us out of here. Now." But before they could turn back, the sensors picked up movement. From the dark side of the ruined station, a single ship emerged, sleek, black, and unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was small, almost unimpressive compared to their cruisers, but something about it sent a primal fear through the crew. "Identify that vessel," Relvek ordered, his voice tense. The scanners struggled, pulling fragmented data from the ship's signature. The system finally provided a result. Designation: UNSC Revenant. Origin: unknown. Status: active. UNSC. One officer asked. "That's impossible. The human fleets were destroyed centuries ago." Relvek didn't respond. His heart pounded. He had seen ancient war records, studied old battles, and there was one undeniable fact. No human ship was ever truly lost. The black vessel remained motionless for a moment. Then, without warning, it turned toward them. A transmission came through, and a voice, calm, steady, and unmistakably human, spoke 3 words. "You shouldn't be here." Then the Revenant moved, and the hunt began. Panic surged through the scout ship's bridge as alarms blared. The UNSC Revenant was moving. Fast. Faster than anything their sensors could track. One moment, it was in front of them. The next, it was gone. Where did it go? Captain Relvek barked, his claws digging into his console. "Lost visual." One officer shouted. It's right behind us." Before Relvek could react, the entire ship shook violently. A direct hit, but there was no explosion, no damage, just a deep, unsettling resonance through the hull, as if the Revenant was toying with them. "This is impossible," another officer stammered. "No ship can move like that." Relvek gritted his teeth. Full retreat, back to hyperspace. The fleet scrambled, their ships twisting and banking away from the ominous black vessel. But the Revenant did not pursue. It simply hovered there, as if waiting, watching. Relvek didn't wait to find out why. "Initiate jump. Now." The moment they entered hyperspace, the crew exhaled in relief. But that relief was short-lived. "Sir," the navigator's voice was hollow. "Something's wrong." Relvek turned. "What do you mean?" We're off course. I don't know how, but our trajectory changed mid-jump." "That's impossible," Relvek growled. "No external force can interfere with a hyperspace jump." The ship lurched, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to bend. The stars outside twisted, the space around them warped unnaturally. Then, with a bone-rattling jolt, they were pulled out of hyperspace, somewhere unknown. The crew stared in horror at the viewscreen. A massive dark structure floated in the void, stretching endlessly in all directions. It was ancient, cold, and undeniably human. The ship's sensors crackled with interference, struggling to make sense of the sheer scale of the construct. "Sir," an officer whispered, This isn't a station." Relvek's blood ran cold. "It's a graveyard." The UNSC Revenant emerged from hyperspace beside them, waiting. Then, for the first time in centuries, the station's lights flickered on, and something woke up inside. The bridge of the scout ship was silent. The crew stared at the colossal human construct looming in the void. Its black metal surface seemed to consume the light around it, stretching far beyond their sensors' range. No records mentioned such a structure. No fleet logs. No historical archives. Nothing. Relvek's breathing was steady, but his mind was racing. "This was not in the reports," he muttered. "We were told Earth was a dead world, that humanity was gone." "Sir," An officer whispered, "We should leave. Now." Ralvek was about to agree when the ship's console flickered. The alien symbols warped, glitching as if something unseen was tampering with their systems. A sharp mechanical voice crackled through the speakers. "Unknown vessel detected. Identification required." The crew froze. "That's a human dialect," one officer stammered. Ralvek clenched his fists. "Open a channel. Now." The comms officer hesitated, then activated the transmission. "This is Captain Ralvek of the Solnari Empire. We did not intend to trespass in your..." Identification failed. The ship shuddered. The power dimmed. One by one, their systems began to shut down. Panic erupted across the bridge. "We're losing control. Engines are offline. Something is pulling us in." Ralvek's claws dug into his console. "Fire thrusters." Now. Nothing. The ship drifted forward, drawn toward the human construct, as if caught in the grip of an invisible hand. Then the Revenant moved. The black warship turned toward the alien vessel, and for the first time, its weapons came online. "This isn't a derelict station," Ralvek whispered. "It's still active." And the humans had never left. The last thing they saw before the transmission cut out was a pair of glowing red eyes appearing in the station's darkened halls. Then the screaming began. This part builds the horror and mystery. The station isn't abandoned. Something is still inside, and it's not welcoming guests. The next part can reveal what the humans left behind, and whether the aliens can survive it. The bridge was in chaos. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the crew scrambled to regain control of the ship. But it was useless. The vessel was no longer responding to their commands. Ralvek gritted his teeth. "Somebody tell me what's happening." A trembling officer studied the failing displays. "Sir, our systems are not malfunctioning." Ralvek turned sharply. "Then what is it?" The officer swallowed hard. "We're being hacked." A hush fell over the bridge. Ralvek's blood ran cold. The humans were supposed to be primitive, yet something was overriding their ship like it was a child's toy. Then, a low hum filled the air. It wasn't coming from the ship's speakers. It was resonating through the very metal of the vessel. And then, the whispering began. Faint at first, like distant echoes carried by the void, but growing stronger. It wasn't one voice, but many, layered, distorted, in a language that was not Solnari. One officer clutched his head. "It's inside my mind." Ralvek grabbed his shoulder. "Focus. We are warriors of the Empire." But the crew was breaking. Their instincts told them to run, but there was nowhere to go. Then the ship lurched. The view screen flickered back to life, revealing something moving inside the dark human construct. At first it was just shifting shadows, but then red lights, rows of them, unblinking, watching, waiting, by the stars. An officer gasped. "Those aren't lights. Those are eyes." Ralvek's claws tightened around the command chair. "Prepare weapons." But before the order could be followed, the ship jerked violently. The force sent the crew sprawling as the vessel was dragged forward, now completely at the mercy of the human structure. And then the voice returned. "We were patient." The whisper slithered through the ship like a living thing. "We waited for the galaxy to come to us." The whisper became a low chuckle. "Now, it has." The last thing Ralvek saw before the view screen cut out was a metallic hand reaching through the darkness. And then the screaming began. Darkness swallowed the ship. The bridge flickered with dying emergency lights, casting eerie shadows over the terrified crew. The hum from the human construct was growing louder, vibrating through the very bones of the ship. Ralvek forced himself to stand. "Status," he barked. No one answered. The crew was frozen, some clutching their heads, others staring wide-eyed at the view screen, now filled with a pulsing red glow. Then a voice seeped through the comms, deep, mechanical, and amused. "You came looking for monsters. Ralvek's claws dug into the console. "Who are you?" Silence. Then the red glow shifted, revealing the silhouette of something huge within the human construct. It moved with eerie precision, not organic, yet alive in ways that defied logic. One of the officers gasped. "That's a war machine." Ralvek's mind reeled. "Impossible. That structure has been abandoned for centuries." The voice laughed. "Abandoned? No. We were merely waiting." A sudden pulse rippled through the ship. Systems flickered, displays flashed symbols in a language they couldn't understand. One by one, the ship's engines shut down. Then the atmosphere changed. It felt like something had entered the ship. A hiss of escaping air echoed from the corridor behind them. The automatic doors slammed shut, locking the bridge crew inside. "Captain," a trembling officer whispered, "something is on board." Ralvek's heart pounded. "Security teams, report." Static. Then, heavy footsteps. They echoed through the ship, deliberate and inhuman. Metallic. Unstoppable. A scream ripped through the comms before cutting into static. The crew panicked. Some clawed at the doors, others huddled together, whispering prayers to gods that no longer seemed to listen. Ralvek clenched his jaw. "Hold your ground." The footsteps stopped, right outside the bridge. Silence. Then, the doors slammed open. A shadow loomed in the entrance, its glowing red eyes scanning the bridge. The room was bathed in the flickering light of its mechanical frame, humanoid in shape but built for war. One of the officers gasped. "That's a human combat unit." Ralvek barely breathed. A machine left behind. A guardian. A relic of war that never ended. The mechanical soldier took a single step forward. Then, in a voice that sent ice through their veins, it spoke. "Welcome to humanity's graveyard." And the lights went out. Darkness engulfed the bridge. The hum of the human war machine reverberated through the ship, an ominous presence that made the air thick with dread. Ralvek's breath was shallow, his eyes adjusting to the dim emergency lights that barely illuminated the massive metallic figure in the doorway. Its red eyes burned like twin stars, scanning the room with an intelligence that felt unnatural. Then it spoke again. "You have trespassed." The voice was metallic, yet chillingly human, a fusion of man and machine, of something that had once been flesh, but had long since abandoned the weakness of mortality. Ralvek took a step forward, forcing his fear down. "We came seeking knowledge, not war." A moment of silence. Then the machine laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the bridge like a death knell. "Knowledge, then learn." The ship shook violently. Lights flickered, alarms wailed, and the air itself seemed to pulse. Consoles exploded in a shower of sparks as systems failed one by one. One of the officers screamed, "It's hacking the ship." Ralvek's claws dug into the nearest console, shut it down, cut all connections to the mainframe. But it was too late. The displays flickered, revealing the cascading sequence of human code, ancient, indecipherable, yet terrifyingly efficient. "You are not the first to come here," the machine continued, stepping onto the bridge. Its metal joints creaked, as if it had been waiting centuries to move again. "And you will not be the last." A whisper spread through the crew. They realized the truth. This wasn't just a machine. It was a sentinel. A relic from a war the galaxy had forgotten. A war that had never truly ended. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, sending some officers stumbling. Emergency doors sealed, trapping them inside. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsating with an unknown energy. Ralvek's breathing was ragged. "If you kill us, you will start a war you cannot win." The machine tilted its head. "When?" The ship's external cameras came online, flashing an image onto the main screen, and the bridge crew froze in horror. The station wasn't abandoned. It wasn't forgotten. It was a warning. A graveyard of ships, thousands of them, floating in the void, remnants of fleets from civilizations long gone. Their hulls bore the same scars, their systems overridden by the same ancient intelligence that had now taken control of their vessel. The realization hit them like a shockwave. Every empire that had ever dared challenge this place had been erased. And now, they were next. The machine took another step, raising one metallic hand. Energy surged in its palm, crackling like a storm barely held back. Relvek's mind raced. He had one choice, one chance: surrender or suffer the same fate as those who came before. His voice trembled as he spoke. What do you want?" The machine paused. For the first time, its red eyes dimmed. Its head turned slightly, as if listening to something beyond their perception. Then it answered, "To remember." And with that, the ship's systems shut down completely, plunging them into total silence.